Welcome to She Counts, the Real Talk podcast for women in accounting. We're your hosts, Questian Telka
and Nancy McClelland.
And every episode, we're digging into the real experiences, challenges, and unspoken truths of life in this profession.
Because if you've ever felt like you're the only one, you are not, and you should not have to figure this out alone.
Special thanks to our sponsors, Forwardly, Justine Lackey's The Incubator, and Keeper for helping us bring these conversations to life, enabling us to share out loud what everyone's thinking, but no one's saying.
Today's episode is called Designed Without Us, when we don't take our seat at the AI table. And we have a very special guest with us, our good friend, Twyla Verhelst.
Twyla is a CPA with a career that spans co-founding an advisory-led accounting firm, launching a technology startup, and leading accountant channels and partnerships at FreshBooks and Mercury. She currently serves as the Vice President of Industry Relations and Community at Carbon, one of my favorite apps. She is also the co-founder of TB Academy, offering education and training that empowers accountants to harness AI with clarity and confidence. Twyla, thank you so much for agreeing to join us today on She Counts. We are especially excited to have you here to talk about two things that I find fascinating and love to embrace as much as possible: AI and technology, and then, of course, the role that we as women want to and need to play in both of those areas.
We love launching each episode with a story. And Questian, I know you have a special one about how this very episode came about.
Yes, that's right. So I was recently at Erin Pohan's WAVE conference, and during that conference, Twyla gave a talk on embracing AI to lead with purpose, and I was pretty much blown away. Some of her thoughts were so incredibly insightful, and I just thought we have to cover this on the podcast.
I got a WhatsApp from you, Questian, like seconds after it was over, being like, oh my God, we have to bring her on the podcast to talk about this. I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen you that motivated and impacted by a presentation at a conference before.
Yeah, I was really blown away. I was like, everyone needs to hear this. And there are some tidbits that when she shares them, that I'll be sure to highlight as some of the things that really kind of shocked me and blew me away. And Twyla, I really want to hear from you. Can you share with us what has inspired you to dive into AI? What was the genesis for you to write the presentation that you gave at WAVE?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Firstly, I just want to start by saying thank you for having me on. I adore both of you and love this work that you're doing in the accounting space, specifically for women and men who are looking to be allies, for those of us who are really trying to, really figure this out all together. And so I'm so glad that I saw you at WAVE in Seattle, Questian, and I'm pleased that you quickly sent Nancy a WhatsApp note. For me, the impetus of that particular presentation that I was so lucky that Erin had invited me to give was really, kind of a real segment of my own journey with AI. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago to the day, I sat with AI saying like, oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. I haven't even opened ChatGPT. I don't really know what accountants need to know, let alone what I need to know. Like it was all feeling overwhelming. And then it took me an entire year later in that exact same moment, and I know where that moment was because I was at AI CPA Engage in Vegas. And I was like, gosh, I still haven't done anything. I'm still feeling behind. I have not taken the reins. And so I promised myself at Engage 2024 that a year later, I would be able to say, I don't feel behind. The truth is, I still do feel behind because it's moving so quickly. But I've done a lot of work and a lot of training. I've built training and education and done a lot of research and digging into what is happening in this space, and specifically what is happening in this space with women. And so that was kind of the segment that I shared at Wave was more around, how do we leverage AI as women? What's happening with women's adoption and AI, which I could share more about that during our conversation today. And am I alone with feeling like I'm behind?
Okay, I'm gonna have to weigh in on that one because for those of you who are listening and not watching this video, I am just nodding and thumbs upping and making hearts with my hands because every time you say I feel behind, I feel behind, I feel behind, that resonates. And I feel like I would love your help understanding the problem here. Like why do you think it's that all of us are slow to adopt this? Are women specifically slower to adopt technology? What about AI in particular? Because I feel behind too. And on the other hand, I also feel like I'm doing as much as I can. So am I always gonna feel behind?
Yeah, I think that is a great question that we are all at this crossroads of like, are we behind? Why do we feel behind? And what's going on here? And
Yeah.
if we even just take AI out of it, just take technology in general, women generally are slower to adopt technology than men. And there's a whole bunch of reasons why that happens. One is, innately we aren't risk takers as women. Now, some of us are and some of us aren't. There's always this varying degree, but innately women are not risk takers. If you go way back to our ancestors, when you think about like men went out to hunt, women stayed home or back at the tribe to care for the children and the elders, like we were cautious by nature. And that's still a strain inside of us that is proceeds with caution. Additionally, we like to be perfectionists. And again, this is subconscious that it happens, that we feel like before I can really experiment with something or put something into full execution, I have to have it perfect. Versus men generally are a bit more like relaxed with that. They're like, I'm just gonna go for it. And whatever happens, happens. And they have this innate ability to do that, versus we as women hold on to some of these things that are very like deeply ingrained in us. Additionally, especially if we talk about AI, a lot of AI adoption is truly playing and experimenting and trying. And I'm guessing I can speak for both of you and every woman who's listening to this. We don't exactly have spare time to do like things, right? Like,
That's an understatement.
right. Like I don't have capacity in my day to play. Like that just doesn't happen. I'm looking after children. I'm looking after senior parents, managing a household. I have a career. I have a part-time job on side of that. It just isn't happening. Versus men generally do have more time to play. Now, again, I'm speaking in broad terms, but I found this really insightful to know why I was feeling like I was behind, and that I wasn't alone, and that there's some really innate characteristics of women that are having us hold back, and just capacity in terms of how we can actually adopt any type of tech, but especially AI, because AI, like really the best players in AI right now are ones who experimented early, not who read textbooks and are data scientists, especially not in the accounting space. They started to just play with it. And so, we don't always have that time to play. And so I can share some tips and tricks as to how to introduce some of that play time that doesn't feel like it's wasted time. And one other thing actually about AI specifically is that a lot of times I hear women feeling like using AI is cheating. And as women, we hold it very close to our chest that we do quality work. Unfortunately, now, the trophy for staying up till 1 a.m. to put your heart and soul into something is kind of gone. And so, but women have felt like, I feel like I'm cheating by using AI
I've
as
heard
my
that.
right tool, versus men are very dismissive of that. They're looking for any way possible to do the thing, right?
And
And again, in broadest terms, not all men are like that, but innately they're like that. And so versus women are really want to put themselves into something. I feel like that's part of the learning, and then part of the I did this and I put my heart and soul into it.
And we also, I think, innately feel this need to constantly prove ourselves. And so I think the idea of taking something that could be considered a shortcut and then not being looked at as serious contributors like male counterparts is something that's like kind of always at your core. At least it is for me. And it's also, I feel, and I love and use ChatGPT all of the time, but I still find even taking it to the next level use of AI so intimidating. And I'm excited, a little bit later when you do share some of your tips, because I think there's a big gap there. And it's really intimidating and important to know, like, how else can I be embracing this? What else can I be doing?
And I love what you said about playing, because for me, it's not just about capacity. It's about I don't know how to play with technology. I didn't grow up playing video games. I didn't grow up taking apart electronics and putting them back together. Like those were boy hobbies. Those weren't girl hobbies. And again, I am talking about my own. These are broad strokes, and this is my own life. But even my friends, for example, Theresa Sutter in Bookkeeping Buds was giving us a walkthrough of a technology she used a while back, and she just kept saying, "Just go play with it. Just go play with it." And I was like, I honestly don't even know what you mean when you say that. I don't know how to play with technology.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's really common, because if you're not of that mind where you're, trying to solve a video game, or you like to take things apart only to rebuild them, as you're explaining, Nancy, that it isn't natural to play with technology. But the cool thing about AI is that playing in AI can feel much more natural. Now, when it comes to things like automations and some of these more advanced things, that will feel a little less natural if you're not the technology, experimenter. But experimenting with AI can literally look like upload a photo. Actually, I did this the other day because my daughter is going to turn 18 here shortly. And I was curious to know if, like, how much she's going to get asked for ID. And I figured that she will, because in Canada, you can actually drink legally at the age of 18 in our province. And so she actually gets asked at a restaurant if we'd like a kids menu. And so she's just small, she's petite. And so I put her photo into ChatGPT and said, "How old do you think this person is?" I gave them 3 different pictures of her that were very recent. And they said between the ages of 12 to 15. So
Wow.
example of playing with it, right? Of like, I was just curious to know what somebody who's not as close to her as I am would actually say if they weren't feeling like compelled to give her mom the answer that they thought I'd want to hear. So yeah, that's an example of playing with AI, because you can just do things like that with it that are really interactive, using natural language that you can't do in some of these technologies that accountants adopt, where you can't really play. It's not just like innate, like, you look at it and you're like, I don't know where to start. Versus, when you look at ChatGPT or Perplexity or Copilot or Gemini, where, I don't know where to start, is like an open text box that you can just type in anything and use that as your starting point. So,
I
so I do love that about AI.
I do too. And you mentioning that you took that photo and threw it in um reminded me of something that I did the other day, which is kind of funny. And it was personal. So it's like I always think of playing in terms of and getting used to it in terms of business reasons. And I guess it sort of was, but I'm using it on a regular basis. It knows so much about me already. So, and I know some people were doing this online, but I asked it to tell me about myself. And then I started digging deeper, and it was, I felt like I was having my tarot cards read, or like playing with a magic 8 ball when I was a child, because it I then asked it, to tell me about my personality. And after that, I was like, what are my weaknesses? And I was just really floored by how accurate it was.
That's interesting because my friend Ashley Francis, you guys know her. She always says that women are actually better suited to adopting, implementing, and convincing others to use AI specifically, not technology in general, because large language models are actually built as exactly what that says, language models. And women tend to be stronger in that area than male counterparts. And so I can't help but imagine that maybe some of the not experimenting is stigma related as opposed to AI specifically. What do you two think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Ashley's saying because it is a large language model. AI tools are built off of natural language, and like the number one roadblock to not getting what you need out of AI is poor communication. Um, the second would be it just doesn't know. But the first always is that we aren't communicating properly. And you probably even notice this in your own experiences that sometimes you will put something into Chat GPT and you're like, bingo, this is exactly what I wanted. This is dynamite. And
Yeah.
other times you put something in there and you're like, dude, you're not getting it.
Nope. Didn't get
You're
it.
just you're not understanding what I'm talking about. And if you actually were to grab snippets of these over time, you would see that probably how you shared something or asked something in the times that it was dynamite versus the times that it missed the mark is you've probably done a much better job of prompting, communicating in one instance than the other. So generally, again, speaking broad strokes, women tend to be better and more thorough communicators than men. So this is, going back to what I shared at Wave, this is why, women do need to pull up their seat at the table. And if that seat's not there, you just bring your folding chair and you sit down and you create that seat because ChatGPT and other AI tools are built off of user input. And so if most of the users are men or the earliest adopters are men, then it's being trained on and continues to evolve on how males use the platform versus how women will use the platform. And because AI is not a fleeting technology, at least that's what I believe at my core, that this will not be something that we'll look back like we look back, say, at the time of COVID and being, remember when we used to wear masks? Remember when we thought schools would be closed for 2 weeks? This won't be that. I believe that it won't be. And so this is why it's important that not only are we starting to embrace it and getting ourselves feeling more comfortable with it, but also that we're teaching the tools and the development teams and the engineering teams that are going to continue to evolve these tools our way of working with it and what's helpful for us from our seat, because that can and will look very different than what men do with the tool and what men need from their seat. So that's why I believe really that this is a critical moment for us to, even if it's instances of playing or asking a question like, tell me about me, tell me what you know about me, or putting pictures in to ChatGPT to say, how old does this person look? At least it's getting inputs from diverse users instead of segmented users.
Yeah, and that really blew my mind during your presentation when you made that point that because we tend to be later adopters, these tools that we're using are being built without our input. And specifically something so adaptable like ChatGPT that is, like you said, it's changing based off of our inputs. If we are not adding our input, you start to think about what is that going to look like in the future, and it's kind of scary.
It is scary. And I think, sometimes we as women will think like, oh, I'm not shaping the future. I'm not a coder. I'm not creating a technology or a platform. But every prompt that we put into an AI tool is an insight that's being shared and teaching that tool. And you can be rest assured that there's developers and engineers on the other side that are watching what's being put into the tools to say, like, what do the people want? What are they using this for? And one of the things that I shared at Wave is that part of what got in my way with adopting AI is because I kept hearing this message of do more with AI. I don't want to do more. Quite frankly, I already do a lot. And I'm sure every woman, and the two of you included, do more than enough tasks in your day. I don't want 2 more tasks, 50 more tasks. I want time back to do what I want with it, not more tasks. And so that was part of what got in my way of adopting AIs, because I was like, no, I'm not interested in doing more. Um, but I am interested in having some time back. I am interested in doing the work that I do better. I am interested in ensuring that I'm at the table, not just to contribute to how the technology is shaping out, but also that when it gets more and more advanced, I'm not behind. I've actually been in that seat, my seatbelt's on, I've got my control panel in place, and I'm ready. So I have now like reframed the reason to use AI. It's not to do more.
I love that. I was just presenting last week at Scaling New Heights with Jennifer Diamond, and one of the quotes that she said was that AI keeps threatening us with a good time. As in, it's going to take away our jobs, and everybody's so afraid that it's going to take away our jobs, and she and I are like, "I'm here for it. I want it to take away the drudgery. I want it to take away the parts of the job that I don't need to do so that I have time to do the parts that require a human element so that I have time to do those better." So I what as with everything else you've said today, that really resonates with me.
For me, AI actually ends up taking away some of that overwhelm of like some of those tasks that you're talking about, Nancy. Just this morning, I was on a call with somebody who said, "I have this document that I'm trying to frame our positioning on something, and I don't like it. I feel like it actually starts from the negative. I feel like it's got off track. I need it to start over, and I need it to be in like have this sentiment." And if it wasn't for AI, I would be panicking, going like, "Dear Lord, how can I possibly keep up with my notes? And how will I turn this around and give this person a refreshed document as a great new starting point for like, this is the story we were trying to tell." And because of AI, I've got the transcript. I will now be taking the transcript and putting that into AI as well as the original document and saying like mesh this together, but reframe it the way that this person is looking to have it reframed. And then I'll go in and add my flavor to it. But I can assure you that that task would feel incredibly daunting and very tedious if it wasn't for AI. And that stuff excites me. I think it's fun. I think it's fun to then take that data, that transcript and the original and say, let's figure this out. Like I think of it as this new project and this new view on a project versus me like madly taking notes, like worried about how will I ever put this into a document in the way that they're asking for and in a format they're asking for. I probably would be losing sleep for a week trying to figure that out. So I agree with you, Nancy. Like, how do you take away some of these tedious, mundane, overwhelming tasks? And then what you do with that time, that's for us to decide. Like, I don't want you filling it with it's like sand when in between rocks and in between pebbles. Like, fill it with what you want it. Like, let that sand be like whatever you want it to be. And it might be more time with your kids. It might be more time to go for a walk. It might be more work if that's what you want it to be, but choose what you want it to be instead of it being like, oh, I'm going to do more with this time that I have left over.
Yeah, I think that's it's so amazing how fast it can formulate that too, because I've done something similar with a couple of pieces of data that I needed to intertwine, right? I wanted it to look at both and create something new for me. And it would have taken me, like you said, days, and it took me 10 minutes. And then I had, I still have you still have to go back and redo everything, but it's incredible how powerful it can be. Um, so I want to ask you, what happens when products aren't built with women in mind? And I'm thinking specifically of a story that you shared in your presentation about the Apple Health app.
Yeah. What I uncovered, which truthfully I did not have. I had Apple products at that time. I did not have an Apple Watch at that time, so I wasn't really watching this closely. But in 2014, so just over 10 years ago, when Apple launched its health app, it was launched without a period tracker. And the reason for that is because of women not being a part of that development. And women, like, no matter who you are as a woman, no matter what phase of life you're in, our whole rhythm is revolves around the 28-ish day cycle. Like, it's just part of our makeup. And the fact that that is skipped in a health app is critical information, because it's going to give you signals that are inaccurate, because at certain times of the month your heart rate is higher and lower, at certain times of the month even your rate of breathing is higher and lower, your body temperature is certainly different no matter what age you are, even if you are not at that like perimenopause and menopause phase of having the hot flashes, you still have different body temperatures throughout. So what it's going to do is it's going to send out these flags, and you're like, oh my gosh, I should probably go to the doctor, because like I feel like it's giving me this signal there's an impending sickness or something wrong with me. Meanwhile, it's like, no. If you look back, you'll see that this happens very frequently. Or potentially that it's going to miss something that is important, because you're then chalking it up to, well, that is part of that rhythm, when meanwhile it's actually something that isn't part of that rhythm. And so it took them an entire year to then go back to the drawing board and say, we should probably include this in this critical app that we've launched, so that 50% of the population can use this in a way that's actually based off of science and data and the makeup of a woman.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, it is remarkable, right? I'm something that it makes me think of immediately is an older technology, but similarly important, seat belts. I used to date an engineer who designed seat belts for cars, and he explained to me that for many, many, many years they only had male models. They only had their seat belts. They are it whether you're driving the car or you're sitting in the passenger seat or you're in the back. These are the things that are keeping us safe in a vehicle that is moving potentially at very high speeds, and they only were testing them on men. And so at some point somebody realized, oh, maybe we should bring women in and have them be models as well. And I was very lucky because I'm not only a woman, but I'm a very short woman. And so I got to come in and do the 1% that was at the lowest end of the of the height. Um I got to come in and be measured and all of that kind of stuff, because they were finally getting to the point where not only were they doing this for men and for women, but they were looking at outlier cases. And that analogy with what you just described, Twyla. I mean, you talked about putting on your seatbelt earlier. It's kind of a more direct analogy than maybe you even realized.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, thank you for representing the short women, Nancy, and keeping us
We
safe in
count.
cars.
We count.
Exactly. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's really hard to believe that recently that there was a lack of consideration for that in a health app, when, to your point during your presentation, our cycle guides so much of us as human beings and our lives. And to leave that out from something health related for a woman is, you might as well not have anything health related. It's just
Yeah.
such a big part of our makeup that it's really unbelievable. And what do you think that it says about the broader gender bias in technology development?
Yeah, I mean, I think that does represent just that, that they, from the seatbelt moment that you're talking about, Nancy, through to technology like a health app, and how women are, the difference between men and women just isn't considered. Those are things where it's pretty critical, right? Like a woman's size, and even body makeup, like a seatbelt goes across a woman's chest, like versus then, the health app that, again, difference in hormones and makeup. Something like AI isn't as obvious that there's differences between men and women, but there certainly is. I mean, I've talked about a few of them already with communication, how risky we are or risk averse we are. These differences still exist, and again, because AI is not a fleeting technology, it means that it's important that we are represented, because inside of tech companies, we generally are not. And it's because we aren't the first ones to put up our hands to be beta testers. Inside of tech companies, they're often male dominated. That's similar to accounting, that it's a historical, leadership in tech companies and leadership in accounting companies has been male dominated historically. Now it's exciting. We're seeing that evolve. In fact, I'm proud to say even at Carbon, our CPO for 10 years has been a female, which is incredible. But, you don't always see that. And so, how do we ensure that we are putting up our hands and being involved in testing some of this? And again, it needs to fit into our day.
Now, I'm putting up my hand physically right now because I want to be a part of this solution, but I have this sense that I will never catch up. I will never be an expert like Chad Davis or Jason Statz or even Ashley Francis, one of the women in our field who's really well known for her contributions to AI. So how I don't understand. How can I help? I'm never going to catch up. I'm behind. It's all too late. What do I do? I'm a failure, Twyla. Help me not be a failure.
You're not a failure. I'm going to help pick you up. And here's how I'm going to do that. Firstly, I have this strong opinion, which, I heard the philosophy of like, have strong opinions, but hold them loosely. I'm holding this one really tightly, and it'll help pick you up. Which is, I don't believe there is experts in AI. I adore Chad's work and Jason's work and Ashley's work. I am actually very thankful for the work that they continue to do in our profession, where they're charting this course very bravely, very publicly, that's moving our profession forward in this space of AI and innovation at large. But even they, as much as I love and adore all three of those people you mentioned, they're not experts. And that's because they can't be. It's moving too quickly. It's moving too fast. Have they played with it, experimented with it, tried it, tested it more than all three of us potentially combined have done? Yes, I would say that's probably true. But the reality is that they're still not experts, which I hope gives you a sense of like, they're not experts and we're not experts either. And nobody is behind. The person who is behind in this space is the person that is saying, I'm not touching AI ever. I was just listening to a podcast the other day where somebody was saying like there's a partner at their firm that actually was able to retire recently and never had a computer.
Wow.
Uh,
Oh
that they were
my
able to
goodness.
exit the profession without a computer. Now, those would be very rare. But, there's probably people in the profession that will be able to exit without embracing AI professionally. But none of us, none of the people that we know, none of the people listening to this podcast are going to be able to exit without it. And they're not even behind, because even listening to this podcast is telling me you're not behind. It's telling me that you're curious, that you're engaged, that you want to learn. And even if it feels overwhelming or heavy or just like disruptive, or the imposter syndrome sets in, whatever that looks like, I'm speaking from my own experience. That's how I can rattle off all of these feelings so
Me
easily.
too.
If you're feeling any and all of those, that's okay, but you are leaning in, and that's exactly where you should be, and that means you're not behind. Now, what you do from like the gap between where a new person staring at ChatGPT for the very first time versus these people that we look to as the experts and the innovators in our space, is there like this breadth of work in between there? Yes, but where you are and where you need to be today in that breadth is very personal. It's very personalized to you, and how much you adopt it, how much you lean in, how much things you get into, like AI agents and automations. Let's be honest, AI agents aren't doing much of anything for anybody yet, because they're just not there yet. So Chad and team, like that group of people, are exploring that on our behalf, while we're over here using it for other things that do feel like this is exactly where I'm at, and this meets me where I'm at, and I can use it in a way that I find valuable and not overwhelming.
So important. I agree. It's like finding those ways to fill in, because as I was saying earlier, use it every day, but I'm like, how can I continue to grow in my use and use newer tools that are focused on embracing AI? Because very much I can get into, chat GPT, and some of my tools like Carbon already have some AI built into them. But then there's definitely a gap between what I am using it for. And I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of, like I said, getting information out of it, like taking two pieces of information and asking it, make an outline for me, or some of those uses. But I'm curious, can you share, because I know you have a lot of tips on how we can start playing with AI and other emerging technology. Do you have some specific uses or ideas that the women listening can try to help them either get started or kind of bridge that gap that we were talking about between, where some of us are and where some of these leaders that are doing a lot of experimentation are?
The first thing that I actually suggest, honestly, is like taking some steps back to recognize, like, what is it that you want from AI today? And, potentially have this like look into the future to say, like, where do I want to be eventually? But I just want to encourage all of us to make sure that what we're doing with AI isn't because we feel like we should or that somebody else is doing it, but rather we recognize, like, no, I really do want to embrace AI for that particular purpose that's beyond my use cases today. And if you don't even know what those beyond my use cases today are, you might not even need to, really embrace those yet, right? Like, I think it can be a very phased approach that doesn't have to feel like somebody's pushing us from behind, because a lot of these tools where we're seeing, tech that's putting AI into their app, or some new emerging tech that's like, oh, we're AI driven and we're AI first. Some of that's going to be really valuable to us and in our accounting firms. Some of it's going to be fleeting. Now, AI in general is not going to be fleeting. I hold true to that, but some of these tools will be fleeting. And so to even like over rotate on embracing something too quickly, I think that's where women do have an advantage, because we can be a bit more hesitant to not go so far on certain things. If you rebuild your entire workflows question at your firm and you're like, oh, this is fantastic. I've embraced some new technology, some new tools. I've got these new workflows. And then suddenly one of those tools is not there anymore, or it completely flipped on its head as to how it works because this is evolving so fast, it's going to be really disruptive. So I like to think of this as more of a strategic, like, what is it that I want from AI? What is it I really need today? And then start with something that's like, I'm using it for this. This is a pain point I experience. How can I leverage AI to solve for that pain point, and keep tiptoeing it and stepping it that way? Because otherwise it's going to feel very overwhelming, and you're going to think like, oh my gosh, I need to do all these automations and things with agents, and this is what's coming next. And maybe that is where you go and invest your time there. But I'd just be cautionary on doing it if you're not doing it from like the right standpoint of, no, this is the pain point I'm trying to solve, and I am going to invest in this way
I
and
love
put
that
resources
perspective of
towards it.
identifying the pain point first and then figuring out how AI can help you solve that pain point. Because for me, I have noticed that it feels like in general, when people are talking about women being late adopters of technology. There's shame and there's blame. And it sounds like you're not blaming women for late adoption. You're just like exploring why this happens and what the consequences are, and how we can shift the narrative by becoming more aware and empowered, and sort of create our own inclusion by just leveraging our curiosity to solve existing pain points. That's a very practical solution.
Yeah. I'm glad that you like that. And I think the other thing that I'm seeing that is helping women to keep moving towards like using it more, it's helping everyone, to be honest, towards using it more, because it's not just women who are not at like the Davis, Jason Stats, Ashley Francis level. It's there's men too. I was on a call with some firm owners yesterday that they are just starting to use AI inside of their 40-person firm based in New York. And so the thing that is helpful is learning in community. Now, I am an advocate for women's communities because of the fact that it can quickly feel intimidating when a man does have this extra time to invest in something, and suddenly it comes back the next day. He's like, look what I built. And I'm like, I put a food on the table last night. That's what I did successfully.
I
And so
accomplished washing my hair.
exactly, that's my luxury, right? And so I find with women, we can be a bit more vulnerable with like, hey, I used it to check out ask it how old my daughter is. It was fun. Now I know that it looks like she's 12 to 15. That's why it's getting a kids menu at a restaurant, right? So, I can share that versus a man going like, that's nothing compared to what I built. Again, speaking broadly, I have men in my life that I absolutely adore, but it pulls back that imposter syndrome and gets it out of the way in this space that be more vulnerable and share about things that are maybe just more fun or personal or exploratory.
Well, and you mentioned women communities because you were telling us before we started recording that there's one that you know of that is basically creating a safe space where women can go in just with other women and experiment with this and share those stories so that they don't feel that intimidation.
Yeah, exactly. It was something I saw on TikTok where it was somebody who's inviting female founders or female entrepreneurs to a Slack channel. She's just opening up a Slack channel and saying, let's just use this to share. I'm using Slack because most of us have Slack. It's not another tool we need to invest in and adopt, that we can share in. It's like a chat thread, but searchable. So let's use this. And they're using it for this. I tried this and it worked. And also I tried this and it fell flat and it didn't work. And that's some of the fun in AI, is like pushing it to its boundaries. And I find it, like, quite frankly, I find it frustrating when I push it to its boundaries, because I'm like, I just need your help right now and you're not helping me. But it's because I've overwhelmed it or just can't do some of the things I want it to do. I was looking for a data point that I saw in the last 1 week about the percentage of firms that are now offering advisory. Somewhere in my social media or conference life, I saw that stat. Do you think I can find that stat again for the life of me? Absolutely not. I tried every AI tool to find it. I even tried Google to find it. I cannot find it. So, there it is. It's frustrating. It's like, okay, I guess hopefully I see that again somewhere so I can use it. But it's not helpful for that context or that purpose.
I would love to know, what are some of your favorite uses, or, other funny things that you have done, trial and error moments, um, different.
Yeah. Or where in your job working with so many women in accounting as partners, like where you're seeing their biggest value as well. That's a great question.
Yeah, I think let me give you kind of 3 examples. One that's kind of fun and the flex that I use at a restaurant. But I think number 1, honestly, is that I see women using it for as a really valuable tool is like interpretation. Because as women, when we get a form of communication, we sometimes, I'll say I will. I sometimes, I won't say that either of you do this.
I know where you're going with this. I can probably agree.
I sometimes will sit there and think, are they mad at me? What do they mean by that? Why were they so short? What does thumbs up mean in this instance? Right? Like I will look at some communication and over rotate in ways that are completely unnecessary. So I think when I see women take a snapshot of an email or text message or chat thread, and they're saying like, help me decipher what this means and then what I should do from here, that saves a lot of a headache, over rotating, sleepless nights in some cases, and then back and forth, right? Like there's nothing more painful than you send somebody something and then they turn around and ask you another question, and then it's like, oh my gosh, I do not have time for this back and forth nonsense. Let's just solve this. And sometimes honestly the answer, which I remember saying this at Wave Question, is like to just pick up the phone.
Yeah.
Like let's just have a conversation. But ChatGPT will tell you that too, where it'll say, you should probably have a voice conversation with this
Oh,
person.
that's
Um,
funny. It'll tell you that? Oh,
Mhm. It
wow. That's
will.
amazing.
I've seen it say, like, you would probably be well served to pick up the phone. Um, so, I think that that's a great way that I see women using it. And it feels like that's not technical because it's really not. But is it helpful personally? If that text message is from your kid's teacher, or professionally, if that's from your client, we are trying to figure out like what do they mean by this email. I think that's a really helpful way to use AI that just helps save our energy and time. The second one then would
I have to
be,
interrupt for a
oh,
second,
yeah,
just
go for
because
it.
I don't want to forget to say that I love the word over rotate.
Yes.
Overthinking and perseverance, and these are a lot of things I talk about with my therapist, but I feel like over rotate is more, that's clearer language. And we were talking earlier about the art of the prompt and how important you were saying that the first blockage to having AI work successfully for you is poor communication. I feel like the more accurate and specific we can get with our language, the better the results are going to be. And for me, over rotate is, I don't know if that's just a Canadian English word or if that's your special word, but I have officially adopted that into
Me
my
too.
lexicon now. Thank you.
Me too.
It's
I know.
it's yours to take. I don't think it's Canadian. So, you're not, you don't have to come up here to use it. You can just have it.
Thank you very much for that, Twyla.
It's so
I'm
much
very
more
grateful.
positive than spiral, which is generally what I say about myself.
Yeah, spiral or overthink
Yep.
or, yeah, all these other terms. So I'm glad you like that. Mike McDermott, the founder of FreshBooks, always used to say the phrase "words matter," and I loved hearing that. And I think that's actually from others that have said that before him. But he really stressed that at that company, and I took that away from my time at FreshBooks, was hearing that, because now with the world of AI, words definitely matter. And AI will be the first to showcase to you that you're not communicating well or you're using language that isn't helpful. And sometimes that's because it gives you back something from a prompt that is not helpful to you, or that you'll start to see it reframing some language and you can tell it like, hey, I want to be more positive. Even myself bot,
Mhm.
I want to be more positive. How can you
Yes.
help me? And
I
it'll
think
read.
that careful introspection can actually be part of what gets us there. As a writer myself, I find myself sometimes really frustrated with my experiences with ChatGPT because it has taken what it thinks I want, and I will have to go back to it. I have to think about it for a moment beforehand, though, the same way I would think about a message that I'm going to write in a card to a loved one, or I want to think about what it is that I'm writing in an MSN article. Carefully crafted language comes from careful introspection. And when we can stop and take a breath and think about what we're really trying to do, we can actually go back to any of these generative tools. It's also helpful for me to remember that they are not just search engines, they are
Mhm.
generating. And so if I go back to them and I say, I feel like you misunderstood me, here's what I really mean. That so far they have been pretty good, as long as they have the technological ability to do what I'm asking. They've been pretty good at saying, I misunderstood. Let me start over.
One of my biggest unlocks, that speaks to what you're talking about there, Nancy, with it saying like kind of filling in things that you're like, that's not what I meant, or it's sometimes even making up information. One of my biggest unlocks was to better understand that AI tools like ChatGPT are designed to fill in the blanks and make assumptions. And that's because if you only gave it limited information and it kept coming back with like, but why? But why? Almost like this nagging kid, but why? But how come? Tell me more about that. Like, it would be frustrating to use it as a user. So instead, it's trying to get to a helpful answer quickly so that you keep coming back to it to use it again.
That's
But
so interesting.
yeah,
I had not
it's
realized
super
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
It's also why it's so kind to you, where it says like, oh, that's really insightful of you to say that. Like, I was actually using it this morning for something that I'm working on with my parents. And it's like, it complimenting on me on how helpful I'm being for my parents. And it's because it wants you to come back for more. If it's like, girl, you're being a bad daughter right now, you are missing the details. And it's like, I'd be like, close my laptop. I don't need to hear
Yeah.
any of this. But it's designed to be really affirming and fill in the gaps with assumptions. So the less you let it fill in the gaps for itself, the better it'll be, unless it started to get to know you and then sometimes can make assumptions that you're like, bingo, that's exactly what I wanted. But that's a learning over time and not every instance. Sometimes you do want it to talk really technical. Other times you're like, this is for a client. We need to talk at like a 10,000-foot view. I want to talk to somebody as if they're a business owner who doesn't understand a P&L. Like, that's going to vary inside of your use cases with ChatGPT, and ChatGPT doesn't know always which assumption to make. So it fills in those gaps without you telling it.
That's really interesting. I know you also mentioned that you had two other ways that you see it used or that you recommend using it. And I want to make
Let,
sure that
let me give you
we share
those
this.
two others because I know we're coming up on our time. But the other one that I think is really helpful, I mean, I already shared the example of like meeting transcripts. And I know Jason and Chad, when we're talking about these people that we look to, they're also big advocates of using meeting transcripts. Meeting transcripts have certainly changed my life of like how I can really listen in the meeting, not being concerned that I'm missing the details with writing them down quickly on my Remarkable, and then worried about what I'm going to do afterwards because did I capture everything or the right sentiment? And so that one I think is really critical.
This one is huge for me because I always tell Nancy she's an incredible note taker. I cannot take notes and focus on
That's impressive, Nancy.
I
That's
am
impressive.
showing, for those who can't see the video here, I am showing them the notes that I have taken from this episode
It's a
so
full
far, and it
page.
fills up. Yes.
And it looks nice and tidy too.
It does, yeah. And I can't do that. I can't be engaged and do that. So I think that's a really great tool and piece of advice. And there's a few of them out there. We know that there are a couple that are actually, I think, going to be integrating with Carbon. One called Vinyl, one
Mhm.
called Abacore. I've used Read AI, Read.ai. I don't know if you have recommendations for other ones.
I
You know what?
compared Fireflies, Fathom, and Otter and ended up liking Fathom the best. But as Twyla keeps saying, this is all moving at breakneck speed. And I'm pretty sure that the reasons I ended up picking Fathom are like they might not be ahead in the ways that I needed them to be ahead anymore. And so something that just happened last night, in fact, was that there was a meeting where I was getting a question from a client and I had not recorded the meeting using a note taker. And but somebody else in the meeting had recorded it, not with a note taker, but just locally. And so she sent me that recording. I uploaded it into Otter AI. Fathom was not able to handle this for me. ChatGPT was not able to handle this for me, but ChatGPT recommended that I use Otter. So I went to Otter AI,
Wow.
uploaded the video. It created a transcript for me. And then all I had to do, I didn't have to search the transcript. I simply asked the AI, the generative AI within Otter, could you please tell me what speaker number 2 summarize what she had to say for this entire meeting? And then I came back to it and I said, did speaker number 2 ever refer to points 1, 2, or 3? And now I can answer the client's email and remembering exactly what I said. So I can say, as I mentioned in our meeting on such and such a date.
Nice.
blah, blah, blah. But I also did not say out loud all the things that I had thought I had said out loud. And so it was very helpful. But one
Oh,
of the
interesting.
frustrations, yeah, isn't that interesting? One of the frustrations that I had, though, was finding the right tool to do what I needed to do, to go back to what Question was saying about how many there are out there to do. Does it integrate? For example, you use Carbon, right? Does it integrate with other tools that you're using? Has do some of them have features? Yesterday, Question, I believe you were telling me about how one of the tools that you use, I think it's read.ai, actually gives you a sentiment.
Sentiments.
Tell us about that, because I think women who are not using that would be fascinated.
What I've learned is that I have RBF.
What
So
is that?
basically this tool will tell you your meeting sentiments and tell you, like, about your how you're coming across during the meeting, and it'll rate your rating. And mine are always kind of like in the 80s, sometimes in the high 70s, and I'm like, I must have RBF because
It thinks that you're not being enthusiastic
but I
and
am.
engaging, and right, yeah,
So it
that
needs
you're
a little
just
work, I think, but
all right. It's
That's
um
that's
basing everything on expressive extroverts, maybe.
yes, that might be true. So there's one more. I know you have one more tip for us.
Yeah, well, and again, I mean, I could share a million of these, I feel like, at this point, where I'm seeing really cool things with like SOPs, using custom GPTs. We had somebody come through our training at TB Academy that created a custom GPT afterwards and then put that onto their website. And now their clients use that custom GPT as their first stop to ask their questions. So there's lots of cool things like that, but those aren't the like, how do I sit at my desk and do something today? So the third one that I'm going to share with you is actually just my fun flex, which is when I go to a restaurant. Now, to be clear, I'm flexing in front of my husband, who's not tech savvy. When I go to a restaurant, I take a picture of the menu, and I do a couple of things with that picture of the menu. One is that I'll ask it, like, which white wine on this list is the driest. My Chat GPT instance knows my taste for wine, so it's like, which one do you suggest for me? And then if depending on like if I'm happen to be watching calories or I'm trying to get higher protein, then I'll be like, look at the menu and tell me what I should choose and why.
I
Always
love
the
that.
why.
I love
Then
this. Wait
when
a
I
minute.
have
Go back to that. You said always the why.
Yeah, I want to know why. Why did it choose that for me? Because then I can help train it. If it's like, well, because generally you tend to like chicken, let's say it says something like that, then I'd say, well, no, but I also enjoy salmon. So let's consider the salmon as an option. And I have this little bit of a back and forth with it. Again, I'm like including my husband in it, where I'm like, watch this, check this out. Um, then, uh, then when I love the dish, if I love the dish at the restaurant, then I asked ChatGPT to recreate the recipe for the dish, and then I can try to recreate it at home.
Mind blown.
So
Boom.
so we can take like the descriptor, and I also take a photo of the meal once it comes, and then with the hopes that like I'm going to enjoy this, then if I want to recreate it at home, then it actually does a pretty good job. So again, that's like a fun flex, but it's just again, it's using my instance of ChatGPT. It's embracing it for things that aren't just work. It's using it in this fun way. I've inspired my husband to start to use it, where he has been playing with it more now. I've got my daughter playing with it a bit. Like it's just there's this flywheel that takes into motion, but yeah, that's a fun one. But something more practical would be like take a picture of a bank statement and put that into ChatGPT and turn that into a CSV file. Like that's all doable with this technology. Yeah, I just like using the pictures for other fun things.
Oh, that is fun. I like that.
You had said, when I asked you earlier before we started recording, Twyla, what would make this a win for you? You mentioned that you have had a role sort of historically in our industry of doing the tripping and falling for us. And I am so grateful to you for that because, well, for one thing, I love wine and I love cooking. So that is a really, really practical, fun flex. But the rest of this as well, and the inspiration that you've given all of us you did some tripping and falling for us. Maybe it's our turn to take some of our natural curiosity and see what we can figure out too. I'm so grateful to you for that inspiration.
Yeah, well, thanks, Nancy. Yeah, what I've kind of self-proclaimed as my, what I like to give to the profession is, in instances where I can, that I will do something first or forthcoming or in a way that's maybe a bit braver or bolder than those who are inside of their firms and working day to day with clients can't do, or can't do the way that I can. Now that I worked in tech full time and education part time, I'm able to do some things that I didn't have the luxury of doing before when I was in the firm. So whether that was, if you remember back to the video per day experiment, or doing some things with women in mentorship, now with AI. When I decided I was going to embrace AI, I went all in and I said, you know what? I'm going to partner with somebody and we're going to create content and education for accountants. And there's no better way to learn and trip and fall with AI or any adoption of any tool than to say, I'm going to start to teach others and motivate others to use it. And I feel like there's times when I'm able to do that and give that to the profession, and other times when I'm the follower, when I'm like, who's gone before me, who's tripped and fallen, and please like help me take the steps behind you. There's plenty of instances where that's the role that I play. But when I can, I like to, give this back to the profession, which is why I love talking about this stuff and love, being the experimenter, because I'm not at risk of losing clients or messing up my entire team's workflow by embracing AI. So I can do that and share that back.
So, to that note, can you tell everyone where they can find out more about you and your work?
Well, LinkedIn's the social platform that I'm on definitely the most. I dabble a little bit in Twitter or X, but mostly I'm on LinkedIn. And from there, you can find in my profile the TB Academy profile as well. That one's a little bit quieter because Byron and I have just been so busy creating content over the last year. But we're excited that we've just launched our on demand of our what we call AI Foundations. So people can take that in a self-study format. We also have live cohorts of that because, again, going back to community learning, where you can come together with others who are embracing it. And then we have an AI impact course, which is the more advanced, where we start going into like Excel macros and advisory and some real analytical things with financial statements in that AI impact course. And so that one we also offer in a live cohort training or firm-specific training.
That's amazing. And I also want to mention too that at Wave, and I'd already met her, but Tam Nguyen, who is also with us there, she is working as an AI educator and consultant, and also has some on her website, which is techwithtam.com. She has some free prompts. So because that's a good way to start, right? Is like getting your prompts right. So she does share some of those. So can you tell us where for TB Academy, what's the website and how can people get involved in some of those courses and cohorts?
Yeah, so it's just tvacademy.ai. So that's the website address. Again, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and I can direct you to the right place. Where, because it's summertime, we've got a impact cohort here in July, and then it'll all pick up again in September, just with people taking vacations. But you can do the on demand anytime. You could be sitting by the beach and having a margarita if you'd like to take that on demand training. But yeah,
Well, I
follow
know
me.
what questions in my next vacation is going to be.
Right?
Margaritas
Right?
and AI and the beach.
Yeah. You could call it like Aperol Spritz and AI, so it'd be AS and AI or something. Something with got some sort of rhythm to it. Margaritas and AI. Does it Margs and AI? I
It's
don't know.
not.
I have to figure out something.
I'm going to
Something
ask
catchy.
ChatGPT for help
Yes.
on how to
There
name
we
that
go.
one. I like
There
it.
we go.
Well, Twyla, thank you so much for being here today. This has just been an incredible conversation. I've learned a lot. I'm hoping that our listeners have too. And speaking of our listeners, we would really love to ask you all to please follow our She Counts podcast LinkedIn page and to join in on the conversation by sharing under the episode Designed Without Us what makes you most apprehensive about trying new tech or AI?
And before we sign off, I want to leave you with a quote by Sheryl Sandberg, and that is that no industry or country can reach its full potential until women reach their full potential. This is especially true of science and technology, where women with a surplus of talent still face a deficit of opportunity.
It's a great quote.
Yeah,
I
totally
love
great.
that one. All right, Cheryl. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us on She Counts, the Real Talk podcast for women in accounting.
If something in today's episode hit home for you, well, that's exactly why we're doing this.
So you feel seen, heard, and most importantly, never alone.
And remember that you can get CPE credit for listening at earmark.app. Links to that and any other resources will be in the show notes, thanks to Nancy's extensive note taking.
And please subscribe and leave us a review because it helps other people find the podcast. And share this with another woman in accounting who needs to hear it too.
And many thanks to you, Twyla, our amazing guest. We're so glad that you could join us, and we'll see everyone in 2 weeks.
Thank you.